Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Changing the Climate, a show where we talk about the changing world around us and how we can make it better. Brought to you by Climate Change Realty. All right, hello, everybody, and happy Thursday. I am very excited to have another episode of Changing the Climate, and I am very lucky and pleasure to welcome my guest, SarahDawn Haynes. SarahDawn, thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. And we always love to get the show started with a little bit of background on who you are and how you got to be doing what you're doing at the moment.
Wonderful. My path was nonlinear, like many of us who are finding our way through this world. And I moved down here from the South Park area and Evergreen. I like to say I was raised by old hippies, bikers, and cowboys. And I moved to Boulder to pursue opportunity to study at Front Range Community College. And I was working and a first generation student and finding that the environment's always been important to me. And through just showing up to places, the Boulder Creek Festival, where the community has tables, nonprofits, and I ran into wildlands restoration volunteers who I've been really involved with. And through them, I met a fella who is still a dear friend, and Phil, and he was wearing a Bioneers shirt. And
Bioneers.
Bioneers, BIONEERS.org. And they are also a radio show that I had been hearing and was really inspired. And he was like, there's a conference, you should come at CU. So a regional satellite event. And I was blown away with the content. This was in 2005, 2005, fall of '05. And really the first time I started looking and understanding and having people talking about issues that I cared about, being around that, and also issues that I had never had a chance to talk about, really, like racial justice issues, indigenous issues. And then I transferred to CU in the spring of '06, and
Welcome.
I ran into someone who was, I remembered, and I was like, you were part of that conference. I want to volunteer, I want to get involved. And he took me upstairs in UMC to the environmental center. And I started volunteering. And then through that journey, I worked and helped with that conference for many years, and lots of wonderful things as a student and employee. And then when I graduated in '08, I was hired in '09 to help work on outreach and engagement. So it's been about 15 years, and through that time, I've been part of lots of different circles and groups, and everything from Boulder Babes rugby team to our, supporting kids in my neighborhood, watching them grow up, working with BVSD, the loads of volunteering, and like I didn't mean to. Things just, there's a lot of opportunities, especially if you're able to stay put. And I've been able to do that because I have affordable housing.
Interesting.
And that really opened the door to my involvement with co-op ordinance, and now working with bedrooms are for people.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing. You're a rarity and a natural born Coloradan on the show. So we're happy to have you, and it's nice to hear. Yeah, I mean, you get involved with the community, and then more and more people you meet, and everyone's really nice. It's great. I'm curious, well, why your interest in like these topics has persisted. I'm wondering if it's kind of just who you've always been interested in environmentalism or sustainability, or you think it's really because the community that you're involved with you love so much.
Yeah, great question. I remember an auntie from Missouri. Um, my father was the first in 7 generations to leave Missouri, and she had said to me once when I was like a teenager, probably. She's like, I know your daddy liked being outside, but I don't remember him giving a damn what happened to it. and like, where did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
And he passed when I was young, but in the years since getting involved with restoration, ecological restoration, and trail building, I've worked on mountains that he helped blow up for mining. So
Full
was a death
circle.
end, like being able to restore some of these places that, and that Colorado has a really extractive history, especially in the high country. A lot of the West does. It's part of the legacy of the last couple hundred years, and there's a lot of work to restore it. So I've been exposed to these issues. I grew up, camping and fishing and the hunting. The it's hard not to fall in love with Colorado, and being outdoors and being in these places over, with a conscious memory. I'm 40. I have some decades of memories, and
Cool.
I'm watching Colorado get loved to death. So, being able to show up and take care of what I love it isn't something that I have to think about. And we're just so lucky because there's agencies that create the opportunities for just anybody to show up and do work that helps take care of what we have. 14ers and rivers and trails. It's a lot of work, and funding has been decreasing over the last 10 years. Well, especially through the pandemic, impact and use has been going up, of course, with population going up. And I can't blame people for wanting to be here and be in these spaces and do these wonderful things, but we need more help. And so I probably got off on a little bit of a tangent because I get
I
really
love it.
excited and passionate about outdoor conservation and just gratitude for what we have and the people who've there's so much labor and people who've built a lot of wonderful spaces that we play in throughout the Front Range and in the
Mm-hmm.
West. Great
Very cool.
legacy.
Yeah, well, that story that you mentioned about your dad doing mining and now you working on sustainability is very interesting, and it kind of transitions me into want to bring up the topic of kind of general schools of thought of regeneration versus
Mhm.
sustainability. And I know it's just words, and we're all trying to make the world a better place, but ever since I talked to Phil from Mad Ag, I've been really interested in the idea of, yeah, you know him, I take it. He's really cool. The idea of regeneration over just sustainability, because I think the mainstream idea, even though it wasn't always mainstream, is now this: we need to sustain things so we don't like take away more. But I feel like when we'll get into talking about biomimicry and doing what the land wants soon. But I feel like the idea of generation just really rings true to me as a servant personality. I always want to give back more than I take. So I just wanted to ask your opinion on that distinction. Looks like we've got a guest on the show.
Yeah, this is Finnegan.
Yeah,
He's the sweetest, best boy, and that's great. And I adore Phil and Mad Ag's work, and also we're both pretty big fans of. Sorry, I'm so overexposed in here, but the
no
Land
problem.
Institute.
Cool.
And Phil and I have caravanned with students to the Salina, Kansas at the end of September. And this place is doing the regenerative agriculture through Kernza perennial grain. And they have tours and talks. It's the New York Times calls it an intellectual hootenanny. And they do a lot to incorporate biomimicry, indigenous, traditional ecological knowledge, culture, as well as applied science and STEM in the service of transforming our agriculture for the next 10,000 years. I have seen our conversation, from environmentalists, conservationists, sustainability, regeneration, and it's really exciting. Words are magic, and that's why they call it spelling, right? But the regenerative, concepts of systems thinking is really transformational transforming like solutions and the way we frame problems. There's a lot of spokes on the wheel, and directions people can go to kind of come back to regeneration, whether it's biomimicry or it's permaculture. There's different applications and facets, and we do need to look a lot towards indigenous knowledge and understanding, and the a lot of our climate leaders are pointing towards intrinsic knowledge and also research that supports. We want land management in the hands of indigenous people, and a lot of times they're still not even at the table. We're seeing things slowly change in Boulder County as well as nationally. The elections matter, and that like I am so interested what our indigenous folks of the West think of prairie dogs, because it's one of those really contentious issues for Boulder, and that there's there's a lot to say about that, but I'll just leave it there because it's thorny.
They're cute and loud.
Yeah, it's a Boulder badge to be at a city council meeting and have people fight about prairie dogs. So,
Yeah. Can you expand on this indigenous topic a little bit? What led you to the belief that indigenous ways of life are maybe, I don't know if you're making the claim that they're superior to our way of life, but at least essential to creating a better balance, at least with nature. I do recall watching a video like last week where there's like a compilation of indigenous leaders talking about the way colonizers treat the land versus the way they treat the land. And it definitely rings true to me, but I'd love to kind of expand these ideas to a broader audience.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna say the best place to learn is through the Bioneers, and we also are lucky to have it play on KGNU 88.5 FM. I'm a lifetime listening member.
She's got a tattoo that says 88.5. Is that right?
Yes.
Cool.
I got it for the spring pledge drive for the radio station a few years ago, because I talk about it so much that I'm like, no, I really mean it. Like I like this, like it's a permanent,
rep it.
Yes. They are so amazing, and they play excerpts of this show, KGNU, Sundays at 2, and it's before Teresa Halsey's show about Native news and music, and listening to scholars. And I'm looking for her book on my we've got Rachel Kimmerer, and she wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, and she's an academic and indigenous woman, and I'm not we've lost a lot of knowledge about place, and it's like one of my favorite examples was I spend a lot of time in my yarden.
Yeah.
Hashtag yarden. Thing.
We got a lot of terms today. We get the dictionaries out.
And well, this one isn't in there yet, but let's get it there. I have a perennial edible front yard, so it's a yarden instead of like
perennial edible front yard.
Yes, so it's a yarden instead of like grass. We fed that to the chickens.
Right.
And I've spent time, and I'm familiar with the cycles of it. That's also part of biomimicry, is observation, and the birds and the critters that come through, and the bulbs and the blossoms and the tree. Like, I'm really familiar, right? And I've lived in my house for about 17 years. So then I think about somebody whose familiarity is thousands of years.
Right.
That the language is built on the natural environment, like the Arapaho people. And like that level of observation and knowing is very different, and it leads to different understanding. So a lot of it is missing, but there's a growing body of indigenous scholars, especially in the climate movement, and they're organized out of Boulder through NCAR, even though it's national.
I'll have to reach out.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks who are helping more Western traditional science understand and make more meaning out of what we know. And that's really exciting. I really encourage folks to listen to Indigenous futures.
Yeah.
We're familiar with Afro futures because of the popularity of the Black Panther movie.
Okay.
And it's a whole genre, and it's part science fiction, but it's also part, futures thinking and helping people identify not just what's possible or what's probable, but what's preferred.
Yeah, I love that. Very, very cool. So you've been involved in this environmental space for over a decade now, as we discussed. I just wanted to kind of gauge, what is your vision for the future of society? If you were kind of to get the control of the reins, what kind of direction would you want to lead the majority of the way we live our lives differently? If that kind of question makes sense a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one of the first things in futures work is that is a plural
Futures.
verb, futures. We have
Mhm.
many futures that are possible, probable,
Ah,
and preferred. You can think of it as more like a Venn diagram. And as we move out, like here we are in the present moment going out into futures. Oh, look, this is so perfect. Right? Here's each blossom is like a futures.
pretty.
So, it's very nonlinear, and there's a lot of great futurist work. I love to follow Dr. Stuart Candy on Twitter, and he has a great blog. He teaches up at Carnegie Mellon and did his doctorate at the University of Hawaii in Manoa under Jim Dater, and who helped start Futurists. And it's about a 50-year-old plus academic field that helps us create more tangible tools to help people see more possibilities.
Hmm.
And so I can't say that I have one preferred future. I do know that there's far greater justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the futures that I want to be a part of.
Love it.
I know that the products that I use every day will not make me sick with non-genetic diseases.
Hmm.
Sip my tea. Mhm.
Is it tea?
It is.
Cute.
And it's my mom. And it's weird.
Everyone who's listening is missing all the amazing visuals. We got the dog, we got the fox teacup, and the dandelions.
And the B corporations are so exciting.
What is a
And
B corporation?
they are a level of incorporation for businesses that have a triple bottom line. It's
People,
not just
planet,
about,
profit.
it's not just towards your return, your returns to your board, to your stakeholders. It also measures your accountability in the manufacturing and distribution, and your workforce wellness, your community reinvestment. It's really inspiring, and we're lucky to have some amazing leaders here in the Front Range. Kim Kupanis, who locals know through her and her husband's work on Go Light, and she's working. She's been working on this for many years now, and has a great Boulder TEDx talk about it. Her work and well, her, bigger than that, but she's a great person to follow in that field, and a local Front Range person. So yeah, B Corp. And I have a lot of excitement for living buildings
Hmm.
and international living futures. ILFI. They have a ton of resources because a lot of us are familiar with the LEED certification, right, for buildings. How progressively sustainable is your building? Everything from the supply chain of the lumber you use, the chemicals involved in fastening and weatherproofing to the paint. There's some really, really wonderful examples that are built and they're performing and we have the technology, and I'm hoping that we see some in Boulder in the coming years because it's next level. Like, LEED certification is cool. It feels like high school. Like, you should totally get your high school degree. It's a
Yeah.
really good idea to have your high school degree. And
Statistics say.
and then going to college is getting a living green building,
Okay.
and that's where we need to move towards.
Huh.
I am excited about futures that give people safer options to bike and walk. As a 15-year cyclist in Boulder, it's scary. Like, we do have a lot of really amazing bike paths, over 300 miles of bike paths. Thank you to Spence Havlick and Will Tour and loads of people who've helped invest in Boulder's non-car culture. But we still, I face dangerous situations in my neighborhood and along, the bike path crossing where it crosses Broadway. We still have a long way to go to make that better. And
Sure.
the I'm excited about more sharing opportunities. The
Mm-hmm.
cost of living in Boulder is right.
Huge.
And
Going up this year by a
ah,
lot.
ah,
Low inventory levels.
ah. And let's talk about using existing housing stock better.
Okay.
And so not having to have a car is really important to a lot of young people because of our climate commitments, because of our budgets, because of our values, because we want to be able to have the option of busing and biking and walking and car sharing. And I am a car owner. I just bought
Mm-hmm.
my first not $1,000 car from a friend this last year, thanks to
Cool.
Elevations Credit Union for the great loan.
Shout out Elevations. I'm a member as well. They do a great job.
Yes,
And they're local.
join your local credit union. And then I bought from a local business, Boulder Hybrids, and I got a 2019 Mitsubishi Outlander hybrid plug-in
Congrats. Woo
electric.
woo.
Yes, and shout out to the Mitsus. And but I do share it with my roommates because I'm looking for that good karma.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have values in sharing, and so it's
Yeah.
and it's really important. So our future does have more sharing. We need less stuff than I think or we find less value in having a lot of stuff. And so
Certainly.
sharing is, we've got the tool library at the resource yard. Like, there's a lot of great examples.
I definitely want to like delve in more to talking about communal living, and there's a lot of a couple people I've talked to have this vision for how Boulder should kind of evolve, and I want to get into that a little bit later. But I just want to try and stay a little bit more big picture because I just kind of can't resist. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I wanted to get your thoughts on like biomimicry, why it's appealing to you, and kind of give it a definition as well. Because I kind of see this contention as I study these issues more and more. I see this contention between people who want to build a very robust, like cerebrocentric world that's based on the human brain creating things and controlling the system, creating artificial systems like the plastic walls or the carpet that's made out of petroleum or whatever it's made out of, versus people like indigenous people or our environmental advocates are more interested in letting nature kind of dictate the way things go. And I see them, it seems like we've definitely veered way more into like the way humans come up with something and they just do it no matter what the resource consumption is. It's just the way it is. So I wanted to kind of ask why you're more appealed to like a natural way of living or
Sure.
biomimicry.
Sure. And I could nerd out so hard on biomimicry. I got to
Let's
do
go.
about a year-long training with a lovely woman, Marie Zanowick Bourgeois, and she was with the EPA as an engineer, and she got really excited about it because she learned about it at the Pioneers Conference. And she created this opportunity for us, and it was really, really inspiring and wonderful. And everybody in our cohort was just incredible. And I'm still hoping that the University of Colorado at Boulder will create opportunities for our faculty to teach biomimicry, because it's a global phenomenon. We have many, 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 many hundreds, if not thousands, of biomimicry inspired products on the market that are outperforming its competitors.
What is biomimicry exactly,
What
like a
is
definition?
biomimicry? It's using the 3.8 billion years of R&D in nature to inspire our creation of built environment
Yeah.
widgets,
It's like living in
function.
reciprocity with the way
That's a
things are moving.
principle. Biomimicry is it's a concept, and it's also a methodology of research and design. So looking at form and function. And I was looking earlier, I was looking on my shelf because I'm kind of shocked. I must have brought it back to my office. But the Biomimicry Handbook, it's a really robust way of learning from nature as mentor and model. And so when I talk about the Land Institute, and when Phil does from Mad Ag, they were looking at the prairie and how robust prairie grasses are, very deep roots, and we want our perennial grains, or which are annuals, wheat is an annual, to mimic the resiliency, of perennial grasses.
Okay.
So deeper roots, more drought and flood and insect resilient. So over the 40 years, Wes Jackson and other people involved have, cross pollinated and cultivated these. I have actually brought home from my office and a lot of my artifacts that I use in teaching biomimicry, and the looking at and asking questions about
All right, let's see what we got here. We've got some visuals coming up, y'all.
the
Is that a
way
giant pine cone? It's a beautiful pine cone.
and it's a sugar cone, pine cone, from
Does it smell
childhood.
good?
And then I have a hornet's nest, and you can see the shape. So we
What do
ask
these items mean to you? Why did you decide to bring them into your home?
well, they're beautiful, and to keep the awe of nature. So we ask questions about why is it the shape, and you could look at the plants in your living room, in your street, and why is the leaf shaped that way? Why is what function does it serve? So if you really want to nerd out, you want to go to biomimicry.net and
Yep.
asknature.org, because you can ask, how does nature cool? How does nature transfer heat? And there's a lot of examples that people have put into products, but also, into science. We have a great example is, spider spit. Spiders use spider spit to build their threads, and pound for pound, when they compare it to steel, it's stronger. And we see green chemistry used in making abalone shell. We're using porcelain. We're using a lot of heat beat and treat methodology to create similar structures. We look at the lotus as a self-cleaning organism, and they've put that towards skyscrapers, so they don't have to send people up to clean windows. We have airplanes being mimicked after whales. They're big and heavy, and they jump and fly through, the air with their wing out, and looking at what has survived tsunamis,
Yeah.
asteroids, ice ages. There's good design. There's knowledge, and we're a relatively young species,
Hmm.
and we're doing a lot to cause harm. And so
Absolutely.
we need to look to our elders. And there's this,
Huh.
strong reverence piece of looking at nature, and that's another part of like the indigenous knowledge of and perspective of the world. It's less dominion over,
Hmm.
and looking at 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 these beings as uh, with their own intelligence. And
Right.
when you look at it through a science lens, it kind of takes away some of the woo woo that might trip some people up. And if you're thinking about like a scientific methodology, and we have some great biomimicry research at CU. They don't really call it that as much, but it's out there, and people, ASU. Has a whole master's and center for biomimicry. The I think we're missing out. There's a Interface Floor is a big uh, flooring company, and they have, after their founder, a Ray of Hope $100,000 competition for students, and our students can't compete because they're not really trained in doing biomimicry.
Hmm.
And which is just, it feels like such a loss for an R1 university to not be on this cutting edge.
Gotcha. I'm curious why you think biomimicry would be preferred to, I don't even know what else to call it, to something we come up with in our own minds. Because it seems like that the preference, the way I kind of see society now is we've moved, Western world is very agnostic based, and the human is like the ultimate intelligence. Whereas I think people who are more interested in indigenous cultures or natural stuff, or it's more spiritual, it's more connection to the land, to the way things are meant to be. So I'm looking for some kind of robust argument for why that would be preferred to a more like anthropogenically built world.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting conversation, and there's so much writing too. Like when you start, like if you start Googling and looking, like there's a lot of people who have addressed some of these things. And um, I look at the performance of the products on the market.
Okay.
PAX, uh, systems, we look at, they're using green chemistry. They're doing more of what they're designed to do without negative byproduct or negative outcomes that you have to like account for.
Hmm.
So it's not, it's another methodology of looking at and solving for problems.
Yeah.
And the it's out there. There's so many case studies, and when people start to see what's possible, that it opens their minds and are like, whoa, well, if that's possible, what else is, and
Anything.
I
You can do it
also
all.
I would also say, if you look into a lot of our knowledge, like there's a lot of examples of biomimicry being used, or
Hmm.
inspired from, without it being called that.
Yeah.
And I think the more you learn about it, and then the examples are just really what it's, when you see those examples, when you see the bullet train in China is modeled after the kingfisher, and why that happened is, it's there. It's in front of us. There are so many solutions to our problems, and So the more people can be educated in this. In fact, like in 2019, like the California was instituting biomimicry um, as a requirement, in K through 12 schools. And
Cool.
I've been trying to find information if like this is being implemented in their curriculum, but like there's some small research through a former graduate student at CU who looked at it as biomimicry for a comprehension tool for biology, but it's so juicy and it's so good. And it's not like, wouldn't this be cool? No, this is stuff happening that we're doing and
Mm-hmm.
that's in the world. And the there's so much more to discover about our world and how it works and why it works, and how to apply that to the challenges that we have and the things that we want as humans. And it's there's so much to do still. Like we think, I think it's a lot of hubris to think that we're like we've arrived. Like there's so much more to advance the
Totally.
human species, and it then people who are really looking for different visual than like the um mm, techno future is
Mm-hmm.
solar punk. There's
Solar punk.
lots of Facebook pages, there's art. It goes with those themes of indigenous futures, Afro futures. Solar punk is like this incorporation of um, science and technology, and also ecological restoration, just societies, and it's really inspiring. Hope punk has steampunk, but hope punk is another genre people can look up and have more. They're a little fantastical, but there's I think the biomimicry images also kind of feed into that, but a lot more plausible because they're here in real life.
Very cool. Thank you so much for talking about that. I really appreciate it. It's a very interesting topic to me. I think we sometimes forget that we really are made out of biomaterial. We're carbon-based life forms as well. We're all part of the same team with the pine cones and the dirt and the trees. But we have a responsibility with this higher level of cognition that I truly appreciate, and I think a lot more people should as well. And then yeah, so now we're kind of running towards the end or out of time here, and I want to get to your thoughts on kind of the way you think the Boulder should kind of progress in the future and have a more communal lifestyle. And I think it's never been more relevant to talk about something like this after COVID, after having seen what it's like to be isolated away from your loved ones for so long, to see that we are not only are we biomaterial, we are simple organisms. Like, we're meant to live in groups of 150. This is what we used to do, and we would be all working together, whether to go hunt or gather. And now we've created these like I mentioned, these artificial walls. So I have a bunch of questions. I'm not sure we're going to get to them all. What's your kind of vision for a more communal way of living in our community?
Well, first and foremost, we need to pass the get the petition for bedrooms are for people.
So let's talk about that. What is bedrooms are for people?
It is on a second attempt, really a third, to get on the ballot and legalize a person per bedroom plus one.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel like it's a really valuable measure for people already living in Boulder.
It's 3 zoned unrelated at the moment, right?
Much of the living spaces in Boulder are three. There are places that are zoned for four unrelated people, and this has been a personal issue where a co-op in Boulder, where I live, and there's several co-ops in Boulder. Some are permitted, some are not.
What is a co-op?
A co-op is a intentional living community, and it's defined by the bylaws that we set in our lease that are really agreements to how we're going to care for each other and the property.
Gotcha. And so it's a lot of people living together. I'm looking for
Mhm.
I went to this vegan co-op before the
Ash,
Ash. Is that what it's called?
probably there could be more than one.
I don't know. I have their business card in here somewhere, but I lost it. But they were really nice people, and it's just a bunch of people living in a house together, like sharing food and having like a more communal way to live. And I feel like it's very, very fulfilling for the soul to be surrounded by people that you have the similar values with. So it was nice to meet a bunch of the people over there.
Yes. And the one thing to keep in mind is, and some just great advice that I feel is valuable in lots of ways, but the relationships work for the people in them.
Mm-hmm.
And no co-op is the same as the other co-ops. There's a culture and a community within each. And the co-op that I'm in has become predominantly queer, Black, brown, immigrant, and it's we need more spaces for people who, I think, with affinity spaces. The opportunity to not have to defend your values, like veganism, where you don't have to like fight about that, where you don't have to like
It's
shift.
always a fight, SarahDawn.
You don't have to like shift or fade, but part of yourself, if you're a Black person in a predominantly white community, or if you're a queer person or a trans person, like if you
Mm-hmm.
can go home in a and just like be who you are, even an environmentalist, like I don't want to have to fight my roommates about composting. I mean, I'm happy to educate and I'm always here for it, but it's like, this is a shared value. And the other thing is, you know as a 40-year-old woman who's not married, not having babies, that I don't, and I have dogs. Well, just
Mm-hmm.
him. I had another dog, but and I have chickens and yardens, and I also have opportunities to live more sustainably. The landlord is an amazing person who's deeply invested in sustainability in his career and in the community. And the that I can't quite do that in a condo, and I have some lots of things to say, about the affordable housing program and sustainability. And there's it's a great opportunity, and I'm really impressed with what we've been able to do over the years that we've had those programs in the city. But I really like living in this house. I would never. We're really fortunate. Our landlord's really fair, but
Why? What do you like most about it? Why do you enjoy it so much?
the opportunities to live more sustainably and with my values.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when you live in community and you live with people, it makes you have to be the best. I'm just like always growing. Like my
Yeah.
mother asked me recently, like, haven't you like outgrown living with other adults? And I was like, no, like I have. There are moments where you're just like super annoyed, sure, with people and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
my spiritual practice, and my like core of the kind of person I want to be, a compassionate, giving person, but also learning my own boundaries and being able to ask for what I need and practice nonviolent communication. And having relationships with people is one of our greatest um, signs that we're going to survive a crisis. The more
Mm-hmm.
neighbors' names the more likely you are to be resilient in a flood, a fire, cancer.
How
The
about a pandemic? You've had a community with you the entire time.
And we've been really, really
I'm
lucky.
jelly.
Everybody stayed healthy, and we have several people who work in the retail industry of Boulder, service industry. And uh the I've been nominally on campus, so not very low exposure, but most of the house has survived, use the bus exclusively or Ubers.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been really lucky, and I am so grateful that we enjoy each other's company, and it's been far less of a burden because I'm not isolated. I have a handful of other people that are in my world, and sharing my delights and my concerns, and helping
Okay.
me walk in when I have really long days behind Zoom meetings.
Right.
And
As we all do
you
these
know,
days.
Yeah, and I also have, how like we share in the care of our house, which, there's a lot to do with a house with chickens and yardens and rain barrels and um,
Sounds
charging
fun.
poles. It's so fun, and
Yeah.
I am uh, living my values is probably one of the things that I think a lot of people associate with me, and
Hmm.
also something that's been really, really a driving force between decisions that I've made in lifestyle and in pursuit of activism and housing. That I want to um, have my thought, word, and deed align. And like, to any young person who's watching this, that's some of like the greatest life's like wisdom I found. And I don't exactly know who said it. People have said it in different ways, right? But if you're doing that, like, you have a lot less neuroses
Sure.
and like you don't have to find
Prolific in our society at the moment.
mhm, the yeah, it's will I live in a co-op forever? Probably not. But I do see the different housing models. We have in North Boulder co-housing, Wild Sage co-housing in the Holiday neighborhood, and there's other ones, the Washington School along Broadway. So people can look at the Nomad community in North Boulder by Lucky's. There's examples, and there's so many ways that we can do this and make living more affordable. If you have one income, if you are on a disabled income, if you are disillusioned with capitalist society and don't want to live to work, and are an artist, are a musician, are a teacher, the an activist, that an organizer, that we have a healer. They're incredibly important in our community. And the opportunity to have people who, some co-ops will cook dinner, and share
Hmm.
that, and um, just it actually frees you up to do more in your community, to show up more. Um, and I couldn't do a lot of the things I do without the support, financial, emotional, physical, like, just like, I'm in meetings most evenings, and somebody's got to put the
Yeah.
chickens in, and we have a system of cooperation. Also, like, our world needs more cooperation. I would encourage everyone to look into Nathan Schneider's work. He's at
Okay.
CU Boulder, and he's got so many great governance models for companies and of all kinds of businesses. And that's definitely something of the future that we the companies that have cooperatively owned, consensus, or models of consensus. There's several ways, to use different tools in governance that have markings of a more democratic society, and that we value each other's contributions, as well as like thoughts and needs, and that makes us a more resilient society. Like, acknowledging the ecosystem and the parts that make it, and um, a social ecosystem, is a business. And so, like,
Yeah.
I'm really excited about those opportunities, especially as we have people aging. There's a lot of elders in Boulder, and or approaching elders, and I'm very passionate about death care, and I'm an end of life doula, and
Cool.
working towards having more space in my life for that, and supporting our community, because we need um, we need to acknowledge that we don't have a lot of cultural uh, markings to lean on in our grief.
Hmm.
And I think we're seeing that through the King Super shooting, which is near my house. And we have even through climate justice issues, like grieving species that we're losing, languages that we're losing, like that we are seeing a world forever changed in ways that's hard, and it's personal and it's geopolitical, and but the way that we die in how we acknowledge the full cycles, and again that kind of comes back to systems thinking and not feeling like we're or pretending that we're impermanent,
Right.
or
It's powerful, meaningful stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, SarahDawn, it's been absolutely delightful speaking to you today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. You have so many interesting ideas, and you seem to be always thinking about all sorts of ways to improve the world, which I absolutely love. I guess my last question is just if you could give yourself advice, the 15 years ago when you were just getting started in your professional career, kind of what would you say to yourself?
Be kind.
You're
I
doing
think,
it. You clearly are.
well, you get a little judgy when you start to get into environmental issues,
Hmm.
and you start to feel really strong feelings about what is right and what is good.
I try
You know,
not to be like that.
is it this diet? Is it being car free? Is it, this, that, or the other? And not, I think there's people who felt judgment, whether or not I was, like, there was a perception that I would be like, you're not recycling. And like, recognizing, the more that I've learned about what is outside of people's realm of power control, what access to, and that people are bringing gifts in lots of different ways to make the world a better place. And it's, maybe their gifts don't look like a recycling program, or but that grace for people, and that we're really in this three-legged race together as a human
Hmm.
species, and we've got to like help each other move forward, and just like at the end, Maya Angelou said, nobody remembers what you said, they remember how you made them feel.
Wow.
So I hope people feel empowered and excited for a future that is more uh, of the things that we want for ourselves.
Absolutely. And I'm definitely in that camp. All right, everybody. So be kind and, be nice to your community and make it a better place every day. SarahDawn, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been awesome. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
No worries.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Changing the Climate, the official podcast of Climate Change Realty. If you are very passionate about these issues and you know anyone considering buying or selling a home anywhere in the USA, then please visit ccrboulder.com today.